It has been 2 weeks. 2 weeks since my life imploded around me. I found the texts. My loving wife of 2.5 years together for 6, who had been increasingly distant and hard to connect with since the new year, had, in fact, been having an affair. An emotional one, seeing as she and the partner have never met in person, live half a continent and a whole country away, but one charged with very graphic sexts, images, and plans. Plans for her to leave me and pursue their relationship. I merely updated the timeline by a month. I have been equal parts hollow, angry, desperate, depressed, tired, and lonely in the days since. When I confronted her, she immediately started to pack. I begged her to try and fix things, but there was nothing I could do. Even now, with the benefit of hindsight, it'd probably take her back if I could. Some of you might be going, wow, OP, that's pathetic. And yeah, it's kind of is. My friends and family have rallied around me, and even her family have had to admit that it came out of nowhere. But looking back, and with knowledge I now have, it definitely didn't. I just didn't think it would come to this. When we first started dating, she had just turned 18, and I had just turned 21. I was working a full-time job and going to school full-time while still somehow making time to be a youth group leader and see my friends. 2018 had been a rough year for me emotionally. Between April and August of that year, I had attended 7 weddings of close friends and 1 family member. I was in 3 of those wedding parties. I'll admit I was lonely. I opened Tinder early in June, and one of the first girls I saw was someone I recognized. She went to the same school as me, but was a few years behind me. And we went to the same church. She was a youth group leader with one of my best female friends, whose own wedding had kicked off the 2018 summer of weddings back in April. I kind of knew her, but again, I didn't spend time looking at girls still in high school. Her profile showed she was 18, and I paid to super swipe. I was in church at the time, actually. And lo and behold, she liked me back, from the other side of the auditorium. Chatted briefly and quickly organized a date. Coffee date near to the church, not the same day. It went well. I got there an hour early, nervous as hell, and stress ate an entire massive cinnamon bun before she walked in 20 minutes early, and laughed. Found out that she had kind of already had a crush on me, based on our limited time together as youth group leaders. She was flattered by my offer, but she was going to be doing a high-intensity 2-year course in animation at a local prestigious film school and thus didn't have time to date anyone. I thought that was fair. I was also doing school and work and barely had time to do anything myself. We left the date with each other's numbers and an agreement to take things slow. I told one of my good friends about it the next day, he having literally only just returned from his own honeymoon 2 days earlier. He laughed at me. Nature, you are incapable of doing anything slow, and I can see it written on your face. You'll be dating the girl before the end of the summer. I don't remember what I said, but sure enough, we texted a lot. We hung out every spare minute of that summer, knowing that in September we would both be going back to school and would have no time. It was so much fun. The late nights, the cute dates, baking cookies for the youth group kids, walks in the park, picnics, you name it. Took her to the aquarium and went downtown, which for me is an achievement. I detest most downtown spaces. Anyways, long story short, the last pair of my friends to get married were getting married in the middle of August, and I wanted to invite her to be my +1. The bride, my friend, refused. Unless you're dating her, then absolutely not. Also, I don't know her. To rectify the second issue, I organized a double date to the park and then movies the following Saturday. They became good friends quickly, and I received a nod, a conditional allowance as long as I met their first requirement. Later that night was our first kiss, and on July 10th, I asked her to be my GF. She said yes. We went on more dates, the wedding came and went, and it was a blast. I introduced her to my other friends and my family, and in a few short months, even as she started going to school, she became enmeshed in my life. My friend, who I had told about the taking it slow plan, laughed at me outright at the last wedding of the summer. Despite the challenges that fall, we still made time for each other. On the days where I wasn't in school, I typically worked mornings and was thus available to pick her up and drive her home from classes. thought already in that first year, warning signs began to pop up. As I have now learned in the last 2 weeks of intensive relationship research, she has an avoidant attachment style, and I have a preoccupied anxious style. For those of you who know attachment style research, yes, I can hear your groaning through the screen. There were long periods of time where if she was overstimulated, she would shut down, pull away, or stonewall. And me, in my 21-year-old non-developed frontal cortex and anxious attachment style, would redouble efforts to make her smile, laugh, or talk to me, which, in hindsight, only pushed her further away. But because we lived separate lives, worked, and were in school, the amount of time we spent together was artificially deflated, so these instances of overwhelmingness were few and far between. Then COVID happened, and suddenly all my coursework was at your own pace, do it from home, and so was a lot of hers. So suddenly we were able to spend more time together, and I became absolutely infatuated. She was too. She told me she was in love with me way before I did. Only 4 months in, I held off until 8-month mark because I was afraid of rushing things. We spent more time together and I got on her nerves. Anxious attachment style, needing constant validation and emotional closeness, etc. So more and more, there were these shutdown periods, which I didn't know how to solve. She attributed the shutdown to her low-grade autism. We fell into a bit of the same pattern, periods of extreme closeness and fun, and windows where I was persona non grata for a few days at a time. I tried to bring this up a couple of times, but see previous stonewalling and inability to be vulnerable about emotional needs and boundaries. And me, not having any boundaries or self-respect and going along with whatever I thought she needed. Next few years aren't important, just assume more of the same. I got a new job, paid more, but was significantly more sedentary, and I began to put on weight. She graduated school, but couldn't get a job in her field and so started drawing as a side hustle while working retail. I bought a ring, we got engaged, her parents divorced. Suddenly, she needed a place to live because her mom was moving far and her dad was downsizing to a single apartment. My grandparents stepped in. They had been planning on renting us their 1-floor rental apartment near to where we already both lived as a wedding gift. Significantly reduced rent as compared to local rates. We took it and moved in together, planning the wedding and enjoying being together. At first, we tried being intimate, but I had put on about 60 pounds and was so out of shape that I got winded and couldn't perform very well. So even before the wedding, intimacy problems had emerged. Also, living together meant that there was little to no escape from the other, which wasn't a problem for me, but during this time, the number of stonewall shutdown events skyrocketed. The wedding came and went, and things were good for a time. The first year seemingly revitalized things, but slowly fell into old patterns. I felt alone during the long, several days, sometimes stonewalling periods, and intimacy fell even further, me initiating most of them, though my performance anxiety due to weight and stamina continued to plague me, and I stopped initiating, and then, over time, so did she. Then she quit her good retail job citing mental health concerns. I had just been promoted and was making way more money, and we were fine. Though I was stressed, I've always been a bit anxious about money, and suddenly being a single-income house was not what I had planned. We agreed she could take the summer to refresh herself, and then in the fall she would find another job. She couldn't drive, so the job market was limited to what she could transit to or walk to, which wasn't much. We were still doing good, but I felt stressed regardless, and when it was time to go back to work, I pressured her hard. Several times she told me she didn't like the pressure, that it felt invalidating and didn't make her feel good, and I tried to rein in my anxiety. Though she didn't see the point in working because we were fine, though things were getting a bit tighter. I started budgeting, reducing spending, and she didn't like that. We went on fewer dates, spent more time at home together, but not doing anything. Other issues emerged. Dishes, litter boxes, garbage, both of us falling on the other at points. And I felt like I had to walk on eggshells around her all the time to avoid these shutdowns. Intimacy fell even further when I started using porn to deal with the fact that we weren't having intimacy. Yes, I know that's stupid. I felt ashamed that I was using porn to substitute, and that shame drove me further from intimacy, because on the few times we tried, I was weighed down by thoughts of unworthiness and self-disgust, not exactly aphrodisiacs. Long story short, she lost feelings for me, but did an expert job masking. Daily routine of hugs, kisses goodbye. Then I lost my job. Our contract was ended because my manager and the client couldn't get along, and when contract ended in August, ours wasn't renewed. I was under a lot of stress back in November and took a much lower paying job. Now we were dipping into savings, so I put a lot of pressure on her to work more and was micromanaging her art account trying to maximize money. And she did, but part-time, making a little money from her side hustle as well. To the point where on the day that she left, she told me she didn't feel safe with me because in the back of her mind, she was always concerned about when I would bring up money or her working. During this time, she started hanging out more with friends she had made in a Discord group chat for a piece of media we both enjoyed, and from there she would live stream her drawing and playing said media. A girl joined the live streams and the two became fast friends. Important bit of context, my wife is pansexual and this friend is a lesbian. But at the time, the lesbian was also in a relationship and even had her GF commission some art of the two of them for Valentine's